feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast, and we are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Tuesday morning. It's March 25th after the Wolves 119-103 loss to the Indiana Pacers on Monday night. The Wolves' third loss in their last 4 games. The record is now 41-32 with 9 games to go. 2 losses behind Golden State, who is now 41-30 for the 6th seed, and 1 loss behind the Clippers, who are 40-31 for the 7th seed. That Wolves 8-game winning streak and the brand of basketball they were playing during it is kind of feeling distant right now. I got Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick here with me. Jace, the last time you and I recorded was 8 days ago, the day after they'd won their
it was like a year
game
ago.
in a row. Yeah, their 8th game in a row. For that episode, we ranked playoff opponents. We talked about the teams that we thought that they would beat.
Most of
them in the first round. Did we do the thing? Did we do the thing that we said we weren't going to do in February, where we get carried away with the win streak and to losing teams? We did it. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. But don't worry, it was because we liked the way they're playing. So
does that sound better?
That's how we justified it at the time. I no longer feel that way. I no longer like the way they're playing. So
you changed your mind. So you're
a material change.
This team's tough, man. It's tough. It's tough to. I could tell for sure for fans, it's tough to stay locked in with. It's tough for me to know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just feels very bipolar all across the board. And this last week is like the perfect encapsulation of it, right? And it's slipping away. There's 9 games left. It's a bummer. And the issues that popped up last night, right, are similar issues to the brand of basketball that we did struggle with during some of the rougher stretches of the season. I mean, I let you kind of take it from last night of what stood out most, but I kind of feel like this episode is a recalibration of, all right, that winning streak happened. I'm not necessarily totally taking away from it, but What is this team now with 9 games left?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's a team that will be matchup dependent come playoffs. I really do believe that, but maybe the teams that you were like, they'll beat them is dwindling because it seems so often like they have to be the tone setters in the game. And if they do that, they can beat anybody. Right. But if you are more willing to put in the work to make sure that you're the team setting the tone, like Minnesota will back off and be like, you got it. Indiana knows the way they like to play basketball, and they go out there and they do it, and they're pretty adamant about it. And Minnesota's like, all right, like nothing we can do about this. You guys are willing to put in all of this off ball movement and play with pace and push no matter what, and all of these things, and be physical defensively, even with like not physical in that like, hey, we'll deter you at the rim and whatnot, and we'll push, but just on you at all spots. Like whoever's on you, even if it's like a mismatch, like we'll just be like aggressive into the ball and you can blow by or whatever and make you beat us that way. And it was just like, I don't know, twice now with entirely different groups of personnel. It was too much for Minnesota. So it's like, if you are, and like it was Zion in that Pelicans game, like he was the tone setter. It's like, if you are willing to set the tone, then Minnesota's like, all right, it's the teams in which Minnesota can easily impose themselves against you that they can beat. But if you push back or you decide that you're going to be the ones who are dictating the terms of play, like you beat this team more times than not. And that's just kind of been the story of the season.
Yeah, I like that, setting the tone, because I'm thinking a lot, or have been thinking a lot like this week about what's the role of the best players when a team kind of starts slipping, and I do think that's what it is, right? It is the veteran players who are the best players on their team have a very good awareness for tone, right? And what the team needs at a given moment, style of play, what needs to be attacked. And I was thinking about it this last night, and I'm like, how much of that is fair to put on Ant as clearly the best player, and how much of this like specific gap filling, tone setting sort of stuff. Like I was thinking about Jimmy Butler, and I know Wolves fans will hate this. But I think that's one thing Jimmy's really good at, right? Of like understanding what the game needs at a given time, which is more of him, less of him, more of area X, less of area Y, whatever it might be. Jimmy's 36 though, and not that he's like a perfect player or anything, but we could go through some more veteran players in the league, And I think like in this week where Ant has struggled, and we can talk about the thumb laceration. I know he wasn't 100% healthy, but I do feel like that in general is what is missing from this team is like a hold on, we're not doing X, Y, and Z. We haven't been doing it for the last 3 minutes. Let's make sure it's not 8, you know? And maybe that's not Ant. Maybe that needs to be Julius Randle, who's more of a veteran, or Rudy Gobert or something like that. But yeah, those gaps of time where they've lost the tone. Those are just increasing, and I don't know exactly what the answer is for this specific group in those times.
I mean, let's be honest. If it's not your best player, you're not going to be that good. If that guy is not your best player, you're not going to be that good. It's like you mentioned it. You know, like Jimmy's a great example of like, hey, we need to slow this possession down. I need to get to I'll get to the free throw line here. We can slow the game down, reset, set our defense, kind of get back control of the game. And there were times last night where, especially with Indiana's pace and how much that bothered Minnesota, like Minnesota could have sure used slowing the game down. And a great way to do that would have been attacking the bucket, getting to the free throw line, especially in a game where Ant went 6 for 8 on twos, and there wasn't that much resistance inside the arc. And instead put up 11 threes on a night where the shot wasn't falling. And what do threes do? Like oftentimes long rebounds, more pace the other way. So you're just feeding into the problem. And there's just it's just not reading the game. Like you said, it's just not reading what the team needs. It's not reading how the game is playing out, what needs to change. And so much of that for Ant, at least at this point in his career, still just has to be coached all the time, which is not feasible in the course of an NBA game. And you could say like, hey, maybe like that's where we've heard all year Mike Conley be like, I need to grab the ball more, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is like Ant wants the ball. He's often the one hanging back for the ball, and he's the best player, so he's going to get the ball. And so you're going to live and die with that. And they've been dying with it a little bit more lately. They've lived with it at other points in the year, but just this major up and down of it. Things are going to be hard. There's going to be nights where your team just isn't playing that great, where you kind of need a reset, where you need your best player to change the terms of the game or elevate everybody else or just carry you through whatever means necessary. And he hasn't done that lately. I mean, I was looking at like just raw.
Not that he's not capable of doing that, because he has done it for other times, but it's like
frustrating though, right? It's that we have these 2 or 3 game stretches where it's like, okay, this is like a top 5, 7 player in the world. And we have other stretches where it's like, I don't know, it's the top 15, and certainly probably falls in that top 15 on average in the aggregate, but there's too many nights where it's like this guy is like last night's plus minus 24 or whatever, by far the worst on the team. And a major contributor to the problems on a night that you had to have it, like I feel like Jimmy, Shea, whatever would be like, I'm going to start driving to the hoop every single time. And they're going to score or have them totally collapse and kick out or get to the line. And we're going to stunt the other team's momentum that way. And it just doesn't click in his head right now. And that's tough. And like, I was looking at raw plus minuses just of guys in general. And like, you look at the Sheas, the Tatums, the Jokic's, and they lead their team by a mile. And it's because they played the most minutes and whatnot, but also that the team is wildly effective when they're on the court. And Ant's like third on the team. And he's worse than Nas. He's worse than Rudy. He's 1 point better than Nikhil. He's like 15 points better than Mike. And then since January 1st or whatever, he's like fifth, and that just can't be the case. Like, you need to be the one driving your team's success. And there are too many times where it's like he's either contributing to the problem or he's just not doing anything to turn the tide. Yeah.
Or if it is the case, right, then this is going to be the result or results.
Right.
There's going to be an inconsistency to it. And, and again, I do want to acknowledge the thumb, because that's a new thing for that game. But I think the reason we're talking in more broader terms is they needed some of this stuff from Ant recently before the thumb was cut, you know, and that's just was missing and continued to be missing.
And one quick thing, he missed the shots last night. This was before last night's game, he was shooting 35% from 3 since February 1st. That number dipped to 34 after last night, but the 3 ball has just not been as this deadly of a weapon. And even on his volume or whatever, 35% over the course of a month and a half, that's going to happen. But then maybe adjust a little bit, be like, it's not, I'm not quite as much feeling it or whatever. It's just not dropping at the same rate, but I know I have 3 other ways I can score. So let's push some of those buttons, or use my gravity.
It was not doing it consistently last night, right? It was because you said he was great when he went to the basket. It was one of those games to me where it felt a little bit like random in choosing when to attack versus when when to shoot,
Yep.
and I'm not sure exactly, what goes into that. Again, maybe specific to last night, that could be, I don't want to go downhill because every time I get hit on the hand, I don't know what was going on with the injury to his hand, but that's what stood
That's a
out to me
consistent
specific.
problem too, though.
Yeah, exactly. I just, I'm trying to get
Right.
our disclaimers out there. But I think that's the thing. And the next level, which I do think, I don't know when it'll be, but that stuff comes from almost every single really good player, as it will for Ant, I think at some point. But there's just a randomness to it, or a decision of, maybe the way to put it is like seeing both as equal effectiveness options all the time, and just being able to choose of like, yeah, my step back is good, which it is. He has a great step back shot, and my going to the basket is good. So like they're both good, right? They both have good grades. So I could just choose either one and they're equally good. I don't think that is playing out to be real, certainly in the aggregate of what the numbers are over the course of the season, when you look at just what it generates on a points per possession basis. But it is a team game. There's 9 other people out there. And in that, the reality with Ant is nothing's going to necessarily ever be like terrible.
Right.
But there are differences of more opportune things to select for himself to do and less. And that's been missing. It's felt like for, I don't know, like the last 10 days or something, that discernment that has been there at other times. I don't understand. That's what I'm struggling with. I'm not understanding why it's happening certain times and not at others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is just, and I often do think for him, just from us covering him for so many years, is like something will get drilled into him in film studies or whatnot. And then for a few games, it'll be like, okay, yeah, he's doing it right now. And then it'll slip back inevitably back to like the old habits dying hard, like
right.
The stretch is like right now, it's just the selection of what he's doing on an offensive possession. There doesn't seem to be a process to it. It's not like this is what, they don't have a rim protector in here, the spacing's great here, I like my matchup here, or I've just like, this is what the team needs right now. I know I can get to the bucket and get to this shot. I missed my last 3 threes. Not saying I won't take another one this game, but let's attack. Like that process just doesn't seem to be setting in. It's just like coming down the court and going A or B, 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 that just seems like where he's at right now offensively. And that's just like last week's Indiana game where we talk about process, and it's like, okay, the shots he was taking near the end of that game, not that they're always horrendous shots for him, but in the time and score situation, they were really bad decisions, and that's just where it's like, what is the process? What are you thinking as you're coming off the court when you're making these decisions of what I'm going to do on this possession?
I think this relates to the group 3-point shooting, which I wanted to talk about. It's like, I do think A or B both work kind of equally well when everybody else is shooting also. And that was a big part of the winning streak, the 8-game winning streak, that those 2 weeks. In that time, they were second in the NBA in 3-point volume and first in 3-point percentage. And when there is the threat and guys are staying home a little bit more on dudes on the perimeter, so Ant has more space to go to the basket, or there's less gap help there because of that, A and B, A being attacking or B being Ant, like creating his own shot perimeter oriented. Those are more relatively equal options, but it's dropped. And that was the one thing. I mean, we talked about it on here some, as I was like, okay, it's winning streak, but like they're bombing it from 3, and they're making, they've made 42.5% of them in that 8-game winning streak, like bombing them. It was like Celtics level. So that's what I was curious about seeing, is like, what does this look like in the first game when they shoot 32% from 3? Because that's going to come. What does it look like when they have a week when they shoot 32%? This week it's 34% from 3, and that's bolstered kind of by some of the Pelicans games too. Last night, I think it was 24, and the first Pacers game was rough too. I don't know.
You know why it's rough? Like, okay, it's Dante 11 for 32, but it's rough because Ant's 23%. He's 9 for 39. Like, Jalen Clark, 4 in these 4 games. Jalen Clark, 4 for 6. Mike Conley, 7 for 11. Jaden McDaniels, 4 for 10. Naz Reid, 11 for 28, which is 39%. So you're just looking at Dante and Ant, like, for the most part. Yeah. Like, it's only, and Nikhil. The other 5 guys, Julius is 39%, Naz 39%, Jaden 40%. Conley 64%, Clark 67%. So it's Ant. Like, Dante
so it's
too.
like the collective shooting of it all. But you're right. I was assigning
team,
that.
Like, I mean, you saying the collective, like it's largely Ant. Like even Dante's at 34.4. Like it's the guy with the highest volume is shooting 23% from three. So that drags down the team numbers. When if you look at everybody else individually, the number's not that bad.
Okay, so it is just. So then it's not a dependence on the 3-point shooting. It's a dependence
of everybody
on
else.
Ant's 3-point
Correct.
shooting.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, they got crushed in it last night overall, and I just feel like
that's a big part of a guy going 1 for 11. I mean, that's going to drag down the team percentage. And Dante certainly contributed to that too. So that's 2 of them. But
it's just it was fun. Kyle and I did like a who's the second best player on the team sort of thing on Friday. And that's a hard thing to answer with this team.
Super hard.
Second, I mean, it's hard to do it at all. And I want that just another way of saying that is a team that doesn't have a clear number 2 is excessively reliant on their number 1, who the Wolves' number 1 is great and young and upcoming and stuff, but he is young and up and coming. And what often comes with that, which of all these players we talked about, of like be more like, I mean, Shea was I'm sure was inconsistent at 23 too. There's just like I've been thinking about there's like some bit of a roster construction flaw if your team is so reliant on a 23-year-old who at this point in time cannot be consistent. You know what I'm saying? Like to have these other pieces around him. I'm not saying that's not on Ant. Like you need Ant to be more consistent, but if Ant can't be more consistent, then what can you reasonably expect of the group? I think that's what's coming to fruition this season. I
would say I don't disagree with you, but as that number continues to climb up in age, as we get to the end of this season now, like eventually we're going to have to get to the point where you're going to actually have to do the work and look. Like how inconsistent or consistent was Jason Tatum, was Luka Doncic, was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at these ages? Because as they've been in the league for this long, like Luka was this age when they were going to the West Finals, and I know Ant did last year too, but Luka didn't have. I mean, Jalen Brunson obviously was a pretty good number 2, but I think these guys were definitely starting their ascension, and Ant certainly has ascended. I'm not saying that, but just in terms
like
of
in this area,
in this area of having
precision,
kind of just having to make sure the team's in a good spot and doing what the team needs, and whether that be like aiding your teammates or whatnot, just reading the game better. The growth in that, like that. Probably never going to be Luka Doncic in terms of like reading the game of basketball, but there's got to start to be improvements. Like that's got to happen. And we hear like the post-game comments all the time where we go, that's not the best perspective on the game, and that's got to improve. And you can say that's age, but he has been in the NBA a long time. He has lost some games because of this in the past. That's got to start to grow. If they're going to take a leap, no matter who's on the roster.
Well, it has to grow to meet his and their expectations. Right. Like the stated goal and expectation of this team is to be a team that's contending in the West. Right. That's, as Ant has said repeatedly over the course of the season, that's the expectation here as well. And that's a relatively high bar. Right. And it just, what I'm saying is it seems like reaching that bar is unrealistic given how inconsistent Ant and the whole group is. It's just, I don't think you can consider yourself a top 4, top 6 team in the league when this level of inconsistency to your best players and to your group as a whole is so variable. And I don't know if that's me doing that. I watch this team way more than I watch everybody else, but there's
probably to some degree, but
to some degree, but I don't know. This team's inconsistent. That's just a fact. Let me grab a break. We'll keep moving here. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. Let's see if I can throw that up on the screen here. Well, anyways, Falling Knife, they are the Wolves bar in Minneapolis to go and watch games at over the course of the season. Projection screen, the TVs are on, the sound is on, but maybe you're sick of the Wolves. Maybe you don't want to go watch a Wolves game. Falling Knife is really leaning into trivia over the course of kind of the spring here. They have Trivia Mafia every Wednesday at 7:30. They do the initials game 7:30 on Thursday nights. And I saw on Sunday they're doing Disney Channel movie trivia at 5 o'clock, which is kind of fun. That's like an hour right before the Pistons game. So you could go do trivia Sunday at Falling Knife at 5 o'clock and watch Wolves Pistons on Sunday night. We always just want you to, one, be considering Falling Knife for Wolves games, but also just a place to go in Minneapolis for you to hang out at a brewery. Keep Falling Knife on your radar. Always. Today's show is also brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And if you're in the market, you need help in the buying process. Adriana at Coldwell Banker is licensed in Minnesota and Wisconsin. The process of buying or selling a home starts by contacting her. You can do that at thedancingrealtor.com is her website, or you can call or text her at 715-304-9920. The perk we have here, set up a meeting, a consultation with Adriana, and you will be entered to win some free Wolves tickets. Maybe that's something you're doing this summer. You want to start looking. Contact Adriana, free consultation session, thedancingrealtor.com. We're at 715-304-9920. All right, Chase, let's keep moving through here. You mentioned this in kind of your first answer, just some of what Indiana presented specifically of the pace and physicality, and that's what set the tone in that game. And I don't think before these two games against Indiana in the last 7 or 8 days, whatever it's been, I would have been like, ooh, pace might be an issue for this team. But the way that they repeatedly sprint dribbled into the front court and got the Wolves defense in both games, the Wolves defense to not set the shell. The shell was not set. And it's just kind of like one of those things where it's like if fatigue wasn't a thing in basketball, like you should just have your point guard like sprint dribble it up every time. Just see if you can break the point of attack. They do that, right? And it just so often leads to like a little bit less ball contain. It certainly did from the Wolves. And now you got to come in to help. And now it's a swing, and now it's the corner three that's wide open. I mean, some of these 3-point shots have been so loose for Indiana in these two games. I know Toppin is shooting out of his mind. And obviously there's some outlier there. But if you just like watch the threes that Indiana shot in these two games, the space just generated to get to that looked so broken from a Wolves defense standpoint. And it's just kind of served to me as a reminder of like, this team is, when they're back set, half court defense, Gobert's out there, really good defensive team. But if it's not set and they're at all like in scramble mode in a bad way, like not dictating the scramble, right? They're scrambling in reaction. This team struggles defensively. And I'm starting to factor that into, playoff series or whatever this might be. I don't know how you couldn't watch these two games and be like, hey, next time we're playing the Wolves, like at least our backup point guard, just go, just go, right. go like that. Right. Am I exaggerating this? This seems like a break in the, foundation of the Wolves D.
No, I totally agree. I mean, Minnesota's defense is at its best with their number of perimeter defenders when you are playing kind of slower and they're just able to really sink their teeth into you and get a little grabby and physical and just way into you and slow everything down you do. And like if your sets are very much like, I don't know how to put it, but if it's like, hey, this is a clear like screen here, and then this guy's coming around, and they're very deliberate actions. And Minnesota can kind of grab you as you're coming around the screen and stuff, and nothing's clean. Where when you do everything with the pace Indiana's doing, even in kind of the half court, but it definitely starts with those sprint dribbles and like getting into what they want to do and creating an advantage within the first 5 seconds of the clock. Minnesota just doesn't seem to have like a defensive synergy right now. Of like that chain reaction, A goes to B, B goes to C, we figure it out from there. And we're still kind of applying pressure even as we're scrambling. That doesn't exist right now. There's just, I don't know if it's like a communication thing, just not being on the same page, just maybe not everybody willing to do what they're supposed to do to the fullest extent or just full awareness. But it's definitely not the same as like even a year ago where even if you got like Minnesota scrambled so oftentimes, you had to be perfect to score anyway out of that.
Yeah.
Now the breakdowns just come far earlier and easier in the possessions to where it's like, yep, if you gain that first advantage, the odds are the recovery is not going to be good enough to where you're almost certainly going to find something good.
So what do you think like the recourse is for that? Because it did happen to be 2 games, not directly in a row, but like, what do you do then to counter, if you're Finch, right, to counter your team's ineffectiveness against a team playing hard and fast and physical, and I think it's Jalen Clark's been a good example of this. So maybe that leads to like, okay, you got to play more players who are willing to play hard and play with that. But like, I also like had somebody hit me up being like, well, the Wolves have a great counter to pace on their bench. It's Rob Dillingham. And I'm like, whoa, no. That's like,
that would be
that's the other direction.
Yeah,
yeah. Going,
like, let's play at your pace. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
right.
it's, I mean, I guess it's just my way of bringing up the, like, should they be playing other guys? And I was texting you about this a little bit last night too, where I'm like, I get that Jalen Clark's a good energy guy. I get that Terrence Shannon Jr. is like a good energy bench guy, but I'm like, aren't the 3 bench guys like energy guys, right? Is Nod Reed the 6th man of the year?
Guys.
Yeah,
yep.
right. Like, so I'm struggling with that part of it from that line of logic of like, I don't know, maybe Finch needs to be playing other guys just because they need to play more and they're that, but I'm not sure what they need is an injection of energy guys. I think what they need is an injection of more like precise players, who aren't getting a lot, who are doing the same thing. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was out of the rotation. I would be like, that's what you need, which I don't know. Everybody thinks I pump up Nickeil too much, but you know what? Nickeil is just like, you kind of get what you get over and over again. And I just feel like the rotation needs more consistency more than it needs more youth or pace or whatever. I don't know what the answer for that is. Maybe that still does come from playing different players, but I don't know. I just think this is kind of the ship that they're riding. Where are you at on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be. I don't think with their personnel in general, like it would take a total personnel overhaul. They'd have to like flip who plays to play this up and down brand of basketball. But I don't think that should be the goal of this team. Like, I don't think that would ever be this team ceiling this year. Even close to it. The goal should be to slow down the opponent. Like, I just play a different brand on the other end. Don't be wild offensively to feed into what the other team wants to do. Just play a controlled, disciplined, precise game, like you mentioned. But they just don't think the game enough offensively to do that. To play the way that they need to play to have success. Like, we talk about Ant just kind of coming down and pressing buttons. Like, I remember a Jaden turnover last night, like the middle of the third quarter, where Julius came down, pushed the ball in transition, and then got into the paint. Rudy had also kind of gotten into the paint at the same time. It's transition, like not the best, but what are you going to do? Kicks out to Jaden, who has like an above the break 3 that you probably wouldn't want him taking. But Jaden then just goes right off the catch and attacks the lane. It's like, well, Julius just got into the lane off the drive. Rudy was already in the lane.
Yeah.
And Jaden was just like in his mind of like, I catch here, I attack the paint. Not seeing that 2 of his teammates are standing in the paint. Yeah. And so he attacks in there, gets into no man's land. Actually, probably could have dropped off for Julius and it would have been okay. But instead, it's just like, there's a lot of bodies in here, turns and throws it to nobody, picked off, like turnover. And it's like, that's just the thing. That looked a lot like Ant of like, I know what I'm predetermining what I'm going to do. I'm not going to read it. And then I might get myself into trouble. And now we're feeding into what the other team does. So
I think that's such a good example. I think it's such a good example because it's like, those are those 3 players are a tough fit together, right? Just because they are collectively, Randall, McDaniels, and Gobert, extremely limited as shooters as a collective, and they do their best things in the paint offensively, right? And so I think that's a great example because it just requires discernment, given that this is what this group is, and I'm like, this is what the starting lineup is for this team, and you can't do that. You can't do that. And yet at the same time, I know you and I have been on here talking forever about this. These are the things that Jaden needs to do. We don't want him to be just firing above the break 3s. We want him to get down and get to the basket. Well, yes, but your 4 and your 5 are in there and often are in there. It puts him in a tough spot to make the right decisions, but he still can't make the wrong decision, which that is in that instance. And that started or was in the midst of that crazy turnover fest in the middle of the third quarter. It was crazy. Yeah. It's one of those spots where in that situation specifically, you have to be like, yes, we thought we had something in transition here, and I'm catching the ball in a spot where I would normally attack, but it's not there. But there's still 17 seconds on the shot clock. Yeah. So maybe we just need to set something else up, and that is just not something that clicks often enough for a lot of these guys. And then they end up in these spots, and that's how you get into these bad ways. Like
Minnesota is just as likely to, and they're great at this, to put together a 10-0 run as they are to give one up because of just the things they choose to do can so quickly lead to, 90 seconds. Just gave up like an 11-0 run like they did to like the Pelicans last week. It just happens in the blink of an eye because the things they do feed into what the opponent wants too often. And just, again, that's just experience or whatnot of reading the game, knowing what's required at that point in time, being like, yes, we want to push it. Yes, we want to attack, but wait, hang on. Right now, I think we just really need something a little bit more methodical, just to, even if we don't score, to get the pace more under our terms here.
Obviously, a lot of people have like frustration from Finch in one of those stretches. I'm not saying that it's perfect or anything there, but there were things he did in reaction to the turnover fest in the third quarter. Was he played Nickeil for 15 straight minutes at one point. He really did let Jalen Clark go for an extended stretch of time. That group at the beginning of the fourth quarter, like kind of made a run back. What was that? It was Gobert.
It was like 8-0. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like kind of the most controlled players. So I have it. It was Gobert, Reed, Clark, Nickeil, Mike Conley, and they had the run to start the quarter. And so again, I think you could come at Finch for like, well, maybe this McDaniels, Randall, and Gobert thing. Like, how much more do you need to see? Like, that's just going to lead to some of these problems? So maybe that's the change, but I don't. That's a really big change. 70 games into the season that maybe you should have made before. What I struggle with is it's like he's not doing anything. Like he's doing my point. That's my point. Yeah. It's not that he's not doing anything. He did make shifts in the plan, and even to the young guys' point, like my stance with the young guys earlier in the year, or I got to the point with Rob, I'm like, if you're going to play 9, it can't just be 5 minutes. You got to give him the 2 stints. And obviously Rob isn't getting that, but Clark is now. And I'm like, I do think that makes sense to me with the roster. The 8 guys and then Clark between minimum 10 to 12 minutes, right? 2 shifts and a second extended one. If it's like last night where that's what you need there. I think I'm always a fan of more structure to the offense. That would always be my number one critique of Finch. But from a rotation standpoint, or playing guys who aren't bringing you effort or execution, stuff like that, he is playing other guys in response to those guys not doing it, So I don't know. I'm curious what people are. What you can do it in the comments. Like what do you think the answer is here? But yeah, you, Jace, what about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. And like the decision to play Clark, he's mentioned this in the past. And I think to like your questions of, Jalen does things that make what we do good better. Just fits in like a glove in that way. And that makes sense to me of like, your team has to have an identity, and their best identity does kind of closely mimic what was last year's identity. And they just don't do it consistently enough, but Clark helps them do it. And so I get going to that, because shifting an identity, I've said it all year. Like, you could just be like, I don't care. Like, they suck anyway. So I just want them to play this guy and develop for the future. Like, if you think like Rob's going to be way worse because he didn't play more in these last 20 games, like, I don't think that's true. But
I mean, he had a completely different approach to the season, which was a youth movement, not as competitive. I mean, I don't. That's not an unreasonable like take that at some point you go, this is a gap year and we're maybe going to play those guys more. But I don't think it was ever that was abundantly clear, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I just still don't. I mean, if you would have said that 2 weeks ago, people would have been like, "What? This team's really starting to figure it out." Blah blah blah. And I promise, and I would almost bank it. Like, they're going to play Denver this next week here, and I think they'll probably beat them again. And people will again feel differently of like, if we just get Denver in the first round, like, look out, and then we play this team. I promise you, like, people will think that because there are certain matchups that the Wolves don't have to do much to play under their terms because they just physically outmatch the opponent, and Denver's one of them. And I think
no rim protection, nobody to be able to control the point of attack.
And Phoenix was one of those last year too. So I do think there's something to last year's playoff run. They did kind of run into 2 teams that they just physically outmatch. So maybe like the whole thought process, which finally really caught them in the Dallas series, didn't catch up to them until that point because it was kind of irrelevant. And the team that they did even physically outmatch in Denver almost got them because of some of the things that they just like the lapses that they would have. But Yeah, I think it's pretty similar in that way, and so you just hope for the right path. And I think otherwise you just go, okay, well that didn't work, but you gained a lot of info out of the season, frankly, of like what really is required moving forward for this team, and the ways that certain guys will have to grow. Yeah, I think I'm with you, and I do think the structure part is tough too, because how many times at the end of games, like, will something happen, and whether it's people will say it implicitly or you'll ask after, like, what happened there, and like a player will be like, Ant didn't really do what he was supposed to do there, blah blah blah. So like, okay, when they try to do structure at the key points of the game, best players like, nope. So then throughout the game it's gonna work that way, like.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe more structure throughout the game would just get more buy-in to it when it matters most too. I don't know. There are a lot of things that, yes, that are definitely worth trying and that they probably should dip their toes deeper into for sure, especially over the course of 82 games where that opportunity is seemingly on the table. But I don't know if there really are any definitive answers.
To the pace and physicality point, if we can go off of those being like quote unquote X factors or maybe potential weaknesses for the Wolves in a playoff series. When I sent you that, I was like, what series do you think that this could impact? What teams came to mind when it was kind of this Indiana style of play? Like they're trying to run you up on offense and play physically. What team did you think of with that?
Yeah, I mean, defensively, I do think of Houston for sure as a team who like digs into you defensively. Now, in terms of like the pace, I think you put this in the doc. I think Memphis was a great example of a team that wants to get up and down, and certainly John, if John's playing a heavier minute load in the playoffs like that, and Memphis is able to play at the pace they want, that could certainly give Minnesota troubles. It's when Memphis gets in the half court that Minnesota has more success against Memphis. So pace would be a huge thing in that series for sure. I do think it's probably to Minnesota's benefit that not that many of the West playoff teams necessarily play fast offensively.
I think it's Memphis. Memphis, if we're talking about the Indiana thing of like, not the hit ahead pass, but the sprint dribble, like just blitzing you with our offense. I think Memphis is the best example of, like Denver, like Jokic is
throw ahead,
outlet pass, as are the Lakers, and doing that. Maybe this isn't right,
and we saw the
Lakers
a
little bit of a
do that with. The Lakers did that with success, certainly against Minnesota in that one game.
No, that is. I mean, there's just in general, this team is very good at getting back and matching.
Right,
like that's what I in general in transition defense. I think the sprint dribble thing is a bigger. If I had to just
it matters more because that's something you can do even if Minnesota's largely back. Because if you do a sprint dribble, you're going to catch somebody kind of off guard, like we saw with Halliburton, and kind of just left Jaden in the dust on that fast break, and then it was just Mike Conley being like, do I give up this layup or this pass dunk?
When the shell is punctured, it's bad. That's the thing. That's the thing that because
nobody's ready to defend in the first 5 seconds of the clock. And that was, do you remember that Milwaukee game where they didn't have anybody? And in the last 5 minutes, their whole offense was dribble as fast as we can down the court. And that person tries to score. And they did it with relative success. And they had nobody. They didn't have Dane. They didn't
Ryan
have
Rollins or something.
Yeah. I mean, it was Gary Trent Jr. being like, okay, I'm going. It was Kevin Porter Jr. being like, all right, I'm just going to go. Like it would just come down the court, not make any passes, or just like a get past half court pass,
straight line attack.
That person would straight line attack. And it was just, and Minnesota was just like caught with their, just caught totally off guard every single time. And Milwaukee, if they didn't score, it was getting to the free throw line or whatever. And that was with nobody. And they were able to pull out that game against Minnesota because the Wolves just weren't ready to defend within the first 5 seconds of the clock. And that is kind of proving to be a thing to where maybe if you're a team and you're like, we don't usually do this, but I think we could pick at this. You might be successful in the playoffs.
Yeah, it is jarring because I do think the Wolves have an awesome half court defense.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like that's part of what it makes this loud, right? It makes these specific things when a team does try and run you loud. And so yeah, I mean OKC would be too. I just think they bring physicality to all elements of the game, and also situationally. I think they're like top. Maybe they were like 8th or 7th or something in transition or pace when I was looking that up. Like that would be another one. And I don't know why I've been like brushing over OKC as a potential matchup because it's a playoff started today. That's the 1-8 series right there too. But I think the point is this is going to be tested in the playoffs. I really do think that it's likely that the Wolves' physical like metal is going to be tested, and then also their ability to defend against a team that wants to play really fast. When that's not the Wolves, clearly that's not the Wolves' preferred way to play offense. They walk it all the time. They want. It's counter. The playoffs are a little bit slower. Maybe of that you can't do as much.
And some teams just aren't. If it's not something you've done all season, you might be like, let's do it. And it's just likely you're not going to do it at least the same way. Like Indiana is good at it. It's what they do. Even if you try to get yourself to do it, the coach will be frustrated at how rarely a team will do it, because they'll just be like, oh, well, sorry, I forgot again, because we don't do this, and so I do think that if it's not really in your opponent's DNA, it is a harder thing to be like, hey, we have to do this now. And that feels like an adjustment that an opponent would probably make if they're down like 2-1 in the series and having trouble turning the ball over and breaking I think that's when it would most frequently be pop up. Now, the first quarter of game 4, you're like, whoa, they're really pushing it. But I really do think that there are only so many teams that would really like make it an eyesore for Minnesota.
And I do think one counter they have, and they did this somewhere in the second half, Jaden just started picking up Haliburton full court just to like make it so he doesn't, kind of just slowing up the overall momentum. I mean, that's going to be hard for Jaden to do for a full, but maybe the Wolves do have enough guys, and you put Clark out there for a bit to slow it down. Like if they need to slow them down, that's a counter that I do think Finch probably has in the bag of like, hey, we're not getting back and matching up. Let's not let them sprint this up and just send Clark at him, send Jaden at him, whatever it might be. And I don't know. It really stood out to me in the 2 Indiana games. I think it did for anybody who watched, just the Wolves' struggles against pace. And I wouldn't have had that on my bingo card before. That was I thought that was a 2 years ago thing, the first Cat and Rudy year. And, run this team and you're going to have problems. But it's, at least this week, it's looked like an issue.
It's just
go ahead.
It's just, if they play a different style than the opponent, they have to find better ways to make sure that their style is the way in which the game is played. That too easily falling into what the opponent wants to do in these games, or if not doing it themselves, just allowing the opponent to play the way they want to play. And so often, that can be like physicality and effort, whatnot, but it can also be thinking the game, and they need to do more of that.
Probably the best thinker on the team is Mike Conley. Again, to the veteran point of it, I do think a lot of these things do. I mean, Mike's a smart guy, but does come with the time of having experience doing it. That's why Mike is kind of the one who calms them down and is important. And I think it's why through Mike Conley's struggles all season, Finch was so hesitant to change that role for Conley. Even though Conley was not playing well, and even though Conley was dealing with different physical things, I just thought Jace did another one of his Conley corners with Mike, which we guys do that about once a month or something like that.
Yeah, it's getting less frequent this year. They just don't shoot around very much. That's when we kind of do it. But we got to one last week, which was good.
Yeah, and it was, I would, again, recommend looking this up, finding on his Twitter or twincities.com. It's just a one-on-one Jason Mike talking about a specific topic. And it was cool to get Mike's kind of unfiltered thoughts, or not even thoughts. It's like truth about what he's been dealing with physically this season. What can you get into from that?
Yeah, so every year for like 4 or 5 years, Mike gets these injections in his knee, and he's like, I'm sure I had some tear or something years ago that went kind of undiagnosed, or just played through it, and cartilage and whatnot, and you start to feel that stuff. But the injection stuff is stuff he's done in the past, and it requires a little process to work through it, kind of build up, get back to feeling like 100% out of it, right before the season starts. But that wrist that we kind of uncovered earlier this year in general, of an injury that basically took him off the court in terms of what he could do with his left hand. He's like,
all summer.
All summer. He's going into, he said September 18th or whatever, like right on the brink of training camp, was when he could start shooting with that hand. So and dribbling and whatnot. Otherwise, he's like, it was right-handed dribbling. And just think of in the NBA, especially at his age too, that's a big factor. You are starting so far behind everybody else. And I remember asking him, I was like, what were you thinking on day one of training camp? He goes, I was thinking, man, I hope I'm ready. and there's no way you are. And here you are, especially on this team and this camp with these athletes and these young players trying to play catch up, which is just not something that someone who prepares as much as Mike Conley does is used to. And just kind of feeling behind the 8 ball and not having his rhythm and trying to establish that rhythm in the middle of the season, where we know this, like, you don't get that many practices and whatnot. Once the show is rolling, it's rolling. And so it took a long time for him to start feeling like, okay, I've done enough work to get my knees and lower body feeling where it needs to be, and my wrist and everything. We built up that wrist strength again, have confidence in all of these things, have confidence in the way I can cut. Because he talked about with the knees, like, when not being able to do enough like on-court work because of the wrist and being able to do anything with that hand, he's going into the season not feeling super confident cutting on it yet or anything, or moving the way he wants to. And then the wrist, he's like, I was kind of nervous about snapping my wrist like on the jumper the way I like to. So by the time the confidence that was built up, which he said was about 40 games into the season, that's when he started playing better. And then you can be like, well,
let's just say, like, this is also the point of why we're bringing this up now, is Mike has been looking for the last 25 games, kind of like last year's version of Mike pre all of this stuff. And like,
he swatted a ball on Nemhard last night where he was behind the play and jumped up and like swatted the ball away. Or it was like, oh, okay, that was athletic. Where early in the year it would not have gotten that. You know, it would have been just a blow by finish. That's it. And then and then the whole thing is like, well, you know, like, why do you want to play in those spots? And he's like, I grew up in an era where we just played. And that's true. That was definitely true 20 years ago, 15 years ago when Mike was coming up. It's like, hey, if you have like sprained finger, whatever, you just played. So I can give you 80%. I can go. And that's really not as much the case anymore. But also, as he noted, it's harder to ramp back up if you take 3 weeks off, especially at his age. And still, he said he told Finch, hey, whatever you need, if you need to put me on the bench, if you need me to come off the bench, which eventually happened, if you need, play me way less, go for it. Like, I understand. I don't want to be out there if I'm hurting the team. But Finch definitely stuck to him pretty heavily. And certainly they've seen more benefits of that. Mike's net rating, all of his stuff, all of his numbers, assist to turnover, 3-point percentage. It's all through the roof in these last 2 months now, but it was rough going, and Mike detailed pretty well why, and it makes sense looking back on it. Mike noted himself, he's like, during that stretch, I'm like, I should not be playing this bad. And he's like, I don't, and I can, and I, in my head, I have a prideful thing of like, I don't care what the case is, I should be playing better than this. It's like, but then when you look back on it, it's like, it does make sense, and it doesn't make it any less frustrating. But the Wolves staff and whatnot, training staff's like, it's going to take some time, blah blah blah. And sure enough, it did. They just kind of threw it now, and certainly it's been a positive for them since.
So it's knee injections in the summer. A wrist injury that prevented him from being able to use his left hand also, like even to golf. I remember talking one time, it's like couldn't golf. And then he dislocated the finger
right as he was starting to feel good.
Which was probably around like 40 or 45.
Right in
the halfway
there.
point of the season.
And
that was kind of a tried to play through it sort of thing. It was, I mean, we would laugh about it sometimes. You'd see him in plays and he'd be keeping his I think it was his right hand. He'd be like keeping it out of the play on defense and like reaching with his left. Like he's had, that there was 3 serious things. I mean, I think the knee stuff, before reading this from you, I didn't know about the extent to which he was getting that. So I say that to bring up, like, there's been a lot of stuff. The play has been poor in the aggregate, or it certainly was in the first half of the season. And then if you look at his numbers collectively on the season, it's been less than last season. I have wondered about, because I just remember this from like the first year after the trade deadline, he got picked up at the trade deadline, played in the playoffs. It was like 37 a game, like minutes a game in the playoffs. And
they were so shorthanded. I mean,
they were so shorthanded.
Kyle by the end, Jaden was out, obviously.
Have you just thought about, though, like, what if Mike was back to playing 36? In the playoffs, like, what if Mike plays for 36 minutes a game? How much does that neutralize some of these things that we're talking about that are game plan issues, thinking through the game issues? Like, the one thing I struggle with how Mike's been used like rotationally this season is it's oftentimes like 5 or 6 4-minute shifts. And it doesn't really sometimes doesn't feel like he's out there long enough for it to like settle in that we're playing like Mike Conley, quote unquote, led basketball. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm just like curious, and maybe
Yeah.
this never happens because they're deep, but what if it was like those last season where he would play, 4 9-minute shifts over the course of the game, right? Rather than 5-minute shifts. I'm curious what that would look like. And I'm open-minded to seeing it, given that Mike's plays signaled it's, maybe could do that.
And it's just at this point, you're just throwing things on the wall. Like,
no.
this,
Right.
Yeah, I hear you. And I understand. And certainly that would, and I know from like the way you think, that would be matchup dependent of like, is that team putting him in a defensive spot where there's just no way? Or do they have somebody he can clearly guard? And then we see what he can do offensively, just in terms of like what he does for the offense. So I understand what you're saying there. I do remember a game, maybe even last week, where Mike was out there longer. It was like an 8-minute shift to start the game because there were no whistles by the time the subs got to the scores table. And by the end of that stint, it was like 8 minutes. And he, on offense, absolutely like
gassed.
And purposely like went out of his way to bait a foul just to get off the court. I mean, so he drew a foul. It wasn't like he went and committed one. It was Mike Conley style. Like he got somebody like on his hip and then like stopped and drew a foul in that way. And then just like walking off the court just looked gassed. So I do think there's something to the fact of he might still want to be 30 plus or whatever, but I do think like 28 would be about where he'd max out right now. If you want a guy who's just not. And maybe if he got a full offseason, could condition and all that stuff all over again, he could get up to a higher rate. But just from watching that one game, and maybe that's misguided or whatever. But just that one piece
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is misguided, but I would echo that. I've definitely seen that I've noted that in my head at other times. It's like, well, Mike's going to the bench, breathing here.
Yes.
Ready. Yeah. It's so. I mean, he's 37. So there is going to like. We're not making excuses. I'm not saying the knee's bad luck. You're 37. You've been in the NBA for 18 years. You need knee injections. Like, shocker.
It's like season by season maintenance now.
Right.
It's part of the deal.
These are part of the deal with it. And I guess like ultimately it's a knock against Mike, right? He's not physically capable to do the things that he was doing before. It's become apparent, I think, over the course of the season that how valuable that was a year ago, I guess. And the consistency that Mike had. I mean, and he shot it crazy good last year. The assist to turnover. I mean, he was doing the Mike Conley stuff, and it hasn't been like that this season. I do think though, even in a terrible game,
it's assist to turnover at like 5.2, shooting the 3 at 50% clip in that time. Like that stuff is
a diamond in the rough of the recent time is Mike Conley's play.
Right. Yeah. And I totally get the people who go, but he can't guard, blah, blah, blah. He get matchup hunted. I think that's all true. I do think you can kind of game plan yourself a little bit in the playoffs, like around matchup hunting of like, well, we pre-switch this, we do this. They might get it sometimes, but then if they do that, that's why we have Rudy down there. All of these types of things where it won't be as obvious. It might limit, it might take out the 30-minute a game option or whatever. Maybe he's not out there then. Maybe you're using timeouts at the end to be like, you're out for defense, in for offense, that kind of stuff. But,
I mean, and they will do this, and they have done that. I mean, how many different roles was Mike Conley used in the Dallas series? Because he was a problem. They would be like, one game, all right, we're having guard Kyrie. Okay, no, we're not going to do that. And I mean, Dallas attacked him. That was Dallas's. They looked at the starting five and they attacked that guy.
And unfortunately, that was also it was hurt from the Denver injury that caused him to miss game 5, and then he re-aggravated it again in like game 2 of that Dallas series. But that is, and if you want to say, well, that's part of it. He's an older player. That's true. I mean, you could say like this stuff maybe isn't age or whatever, but it sure does seem more frequent out of somebody who's at that age. So yeah, if you want to say that's the knock, that's why it's a tough plan at point guard for the now and the future. That's true. But we're just saying like out of available options right now.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. It's good for what they've got. But it certainly has its flaws as well.
Yeah. So what do you just make of this? I mean, final 9 games here. I mean, they did get some help last night in, that the teams ahead of them lost.
Those teams just hang out. They're like, well, are they like call each other? Are we all winning tonight? Yeah, we're winning. Okay. Hey, should we lose tonight? Yeah, let's lose tonight. That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the Lakers lost to the Magic last night. I mean, that's feeling like a pretty big gap. I mean, the Lakers have 28
Denver
losses. Denver lost, but that's not even feeling like too much. I'm like, what
I
teams are
agree,
even
but
relevant?
the Wolves do at least have the tiebreaker, and they have another game with Denver, so like it's a
That's a good
little
point.
more relevant.
Mhm.
Otherwise, where they don't control some of what any of these teams do, like they don't have the tiebreaker on like the Warriors or whatever, and they don't play the Warriors, so like it's almost it almost ends up being kind of similar to the Warriors, the Denver situation, where if they can handle their own business, it ends up being close to even in terms of what they have to get to.
I'm just wondering, like, how relevant anybody is other than Golden State, though.
No, I've thought that for a little while now, and that was
Yeah.
before not even that Denver was gonna, Jokic is gonna miss games and they're gonna drop so many and whatnot. I've been thinking that for the same thing. Like it's the Clippers and the Warriors, and what else are we even looking at?
Yeah.
I
mean, it's Houston's at the 2 with 26 losses.
That's a done. I mean, right?
That's done. I mean, and then Denver and LA is 28-28 at 3-4. Yes, you have one against Denver.
And the tiebreaker, so you can get it down to 3. You get outplaying by 3 in the other games, which is doable, but not likely. You're talking about having to go 8-1. I mean that.
I mean, that's what I said before this Indiana game. I was like, I think 8-2 is probably the thing. And so you already kind of picked up one of those. Oh, sorry, Memphis is at 28 as well.
They lost that tiebreaker.
Yeah, they do play them again though, so there's a opportunity.
So there would be that game there, but you have to pass them.
Oh, they have to pass. Yeah, so that's 3, I guess.
Unless you get into a
4
tiebreaker with anybody, and then their West record's pretty good.
Yeah. And then Golden State is 41-30, and they've played well since the deadline, have the tiebreaker. And then the Clippers one is one we haven't talked about very much. I was like,
Wolves have that tiebreaker, right? Correct?
Yeah, they beat them. Well, they beat them
multiple times.
Yeah, multiple times.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure they would have that one.
Yes,
I'm
positive they do.
The more like relevant playoff related conversation right now. It's funny how we go in a week and we're going through looking up and like who the ones are. I mean, I'm not ready to do this right now because I haven't been thinking about it. But like the more relevant, I think, playoff related conversations are what would a 7-8 series against the Clippers look like? What would it look like to play against Phoenix in the second playing game or something like that?
Well, you pick 2 teams that they usually beat, so that's good for them.
And I do think they will come out of the play-in. If they get there, it's just becoming the numbers. I think are starting to suggest that those are the more relevant standings related conversations because part of this, we're doing the thing of like, and I am too. I'm looking at maybe I'm like, oh God, they did that 8-game winning streak. I'm like, man, they didn't move up at all. But it is March basketball here in the NBA.
Yeah. The easy wins become even easier. That's just the reality because these teams are like they have submitted themselves to how many lottery balls can we get, and I totally understand that. I've covered that team here. It makes total sense.
More than once.
Yeah.
Just looking at it tonight, we got Warriors Heat in Miami for one of those. Grizzlies at Utah. Houston home against Atlanta. I don't think it's impossible that they move up to the 6. It seems the other teams dependent. It doesn't feel like the Wolves carry their own destiny or anymore. They're going to need to get a little bit of help. There's the reality of the situation with 9 games to go. I do still think it's important to go for it and try and get back on like some sort of rhythm of style play. Like, go for it again.
What is so funny though is I really do think, regardless of how the Wolves are playing going into the playoffs, I don't know how much that matters. I really do think that the opponent is going to matter because that's what the story has told us this season. Like, I don't care how Phoenix has won 4 in a row. I don't care if it's 5 or whatever heading into Friday. I will be fully confident that Minnesota will beat Phoenix because Phoenix physically does not stand up to Minnesota, and Minnesota can do whatever they want. And when Minnesota can do whatever it wants, Minnesota plays really well. So those are the types of things.
That's a good reminder. You know how I get. I go like I watch the Phoenix Cleveland
This team's playing well.
KD looked awesome against the Cavs.
Yeah.
I'm like, there he is. I was talking to my brother last night. I'm like, dude, I don't know. KD looked like Brooklyn KD. But you're right. No, they to give the Wolves credit, like they have shown a proof of concept against those type of teams. I mean, Denver and Phoenix in particular, where it's like, Yes, the Wolves have flaws. Those teams don't puncture the Wolves' flaws. They don't. Not
You
in the
think
same
Phoenix
way.
is going to start darting up the court?
Colin Gillespie.
yeah. I mean, they're going to get up and down. They're going to be real movement offense for sure. Pace in the half court.
Yeah, no, you're right. They're going to beat Phoenix. My bad.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's where they're at with the standings, and we'll obviously keep looking at it over these last couple of weeks. But let's wrap this up with prize picks. Jace, just quickly, the two I was looking at, I was like, I'm going to do two less thans tonight from the NBA. Jimmy Butler, everybody, it's the Miami game. And I feel like with Jimmy, like when people expect him to go score and like he does the other thing where he waits back. So I was like, give me Jimmy Butler less than 21.5 points. And then Denny Avdia has been playing awesome recently, but he's up at like 19.5. I was like, all right, I'll zag on that one too. Give me Jimmy Butler less than 21.5 points. Denny Avdia less than 19.5 points today. That's my two. What do you got?
Okay. TGL, this golf league thing. It's game 2 of the best of 3 finals. Atlanta won last night in just a total thriller. I'm sure Ant was pumped up.
Big Fowler guy.
The big Atlanta Drive guy, So Fowler plays for New York. Surprised you didn't see that.
At Atlanta Drive.
My bad. But somebody else said this in like the thing when in one of our tweets about prize picks or whatever. Like, I just take these people to not win a singles hole because they only play 2, and it's more likely that you're going to draw them both, if not lose. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. So let's say Patrick Cantlay less than half a hole 1 and Ricky Fowler 2.
Both less than? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I like that. Just for you listeners. So Jace, when he's at a Wolves game, has this. What is TGL the golf league?
Mondays or Tuesdays. Yeah, the simulator golf league. Yeah.
Just somehow on prize. But this is actually a good example. Good job with the ad read right here. You're showcasing the depth.
Anything is on here. Yeah.
It really is. And it's fine. And that's again the whole point of it is like, do you think Jace is gonna be putting $100 on Ricky Fowler less than no,
especially because one hole is playing like 3 minutes, so that if he won the hole, he'd be like, that wasn't that fun. Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it's like,
if you want more fun, do the triples one because that's 9 holes and you can actually watch it. That's where the team plays the alternate shot for the first 9 holes. It's like Fowler would play, and then whoever his 2 teammates would hit the next shot and whatnot.
Fascinating, Jace.
Yeah, I know. This is our TGL breakdown. Brought to you by Prize Picks.
Exactly. There's 4 things. Dane 2 golf ones, or Dane 2 basketball ones, Jace 2 golf ones. You do $5 on that. If all 4 happen, 50. It's a fun way to just have something else going on these games. Obviously, a lot of stuff for March Madness. And they'll kind of every weekend, it seems like they have a lot of promotions going on with that. So always go to the promotions tab on there as well. If you're new to Prize Picks,
they have like a freebie, I think, for Cooper Flag scoring like a point right now.
Oh, they do right now?
I just wanted to pull my TGL picks. Yeah, and that was up there.
It's somewhere on here. I don't know. Anyways, $5. Just play for $5. When you do create your first $5 lineup, if you're creating an account like today and you sign up with promo code Dane, your account will immediately be credited with $50. And if you want to ride with me and Jace's picks, if all 4 of those hit, that's another 50 for you right there. It's just it's a fun way to have. Just keep a little bit of money in there, and you're like, on a Thursday night, I'm watching this or that, or Mondays and Tuesdays for the golf league. You could check that out. PrizePicks.com, Prize Picks app. Anything else, Jace? I think this is where we're at with this team right now.
Yeah, no. If you are sick of this team, you have 3 days off, so enjoy your vacation from watching Wolves basketball.
It is going to be like. I am curious of like if they do kind of like run it, and if they do win 8 of 9, like
yeah, sure.
What am I gonna be thinking?
Yeah, I truly do believe, and maybe it won't result in a series win, but that this team will crank it up to the best of its abilities defensively in the playoffs. I truly do believe that will happen. We've seen it they've still gone toe to toe with a lot of the best teams, and it's because there's more attention to detail. There's more effort put in, just in the way that you would like them to play all the time. And that was why last year's team was so endearing, because they did play like that more times than not. But I do think this team still has a top gear that I think they will hit. And it's just, will their warts bite them? Will their warts override that just effort and intensity and defensive mentality. But I think that will show itself in the playoffs, no matter how they're playing. Like I think they could lose 3 in a row heading in, and people be like, "This team's done." And you'll watch game 1 and be like, "Oh wow, this is a different basketball team," and it will be infuriating. But I do think that will happen. I really do.
Yeah, no, I think it's the warts and it's the warts, and does the opponent? That's why the matchup specific thing is like the size of the wart. I think is determined by who the opponent is and the style that opponent brings, which is going to make. I mean, I'm really looking forward to when we do know who it is. Of like, talking about these, not even like it's going to be like that for all 4. I think Western Conference playoff series. We're going to be like, man, maybe I would have taken the Lakers if they had this team, or the Wolves are for sure going to beat Denver, but Denver's for sure going to beat LA. Like, that is kind of how I feel, you know. But it's just it's going to be bizarre in that way. Hopefully, the Wolves can put themselves in a position to set them up for a real first round playoff series.
Be in a series, and maybe at least win a 7-8 game, so you actually have like 3 days to break it down and not be like, okay, they just won this game, but now who are they playing tomorrow?
Yeah, dude. That we learned that last year. Or they learned that last year, and they talk to us about it all the time. Of like, it made such a difference to not be in the play-in. You know, that's why they swept Phoenix.
I mean, and like as much as anything, they went down 2-0 to Denver. They lost that game 1 2 years ago because they just played that Friday, you know. And then you go to Denver and you're like, guys are like, yeah, I'm tired. I know, you know.
It was not because it was LA for the first
then back home for OKC.
And
on Friday night, and you play the late game Friday night, and then you're in Denver. Yeah, it's late Sunday, but you know, there's just so much turnaround versus a fresh team, and now all of a sudden you're down 2-0 before the series even starts in your eyes, you know, and that's a big 8 ball to come back from.
Is it Phoenix on Friday? Is that the next one? Or
it's Phoenix. Phoenix on Friday, Detroit on Sunday. Yep.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the schedule's going to be better, more genuine tests, but I would have put Indiana in that as well. So vibes are not high right now, but we'll see what this team could do for.
They can change it a week.
They really can. They did.
As we've seen. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Next week, Jace will be back on here. They're gonna beat the Suns by 30 and the Pistons by 40, and then we'll see how we feel then. I appreciate you doing it, man.
All right, always fun, man.
You guys can follow Jace on Twitter at Jace Frederick. Again, these Conley Corner things on, just search Conley Corner, Google it. It really is. If you've been like, what the hell's been going on with Mike Conley? There's people saying that last night. I was like, yo, not enough people read this Jace thing. Like this, if you were asking yourself what the hell is going on with Mike Conley, the answers are there directly from Mike. And yeah, that was the encouraging part of that. Check that out at twincities.com. Coming up next will be Thursday with Britt and I. I'll be back. I'll be back in town, and we will do an episode, and then then things will pick up again. Enjoy some time off, everybody. Take a couple days away from this team, and we'll circle back and see where we are come Friday. Until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down.